Welcome to the show, guys. We are talking about 3 wide receivers you want to avoid for fantasy football 2025. In fact, I didn't draft these guys for years and won't be drafting them, and they're relatively big names with high draft capital, okay? So 3 big wide receiver names you don't want to draft, players to avoid for fantasy football 2025. I'm going to be continuing doing a series of these. I'm going to do running backs tomorrow. We're going to do quarterbacks. We're going to do tight ends. We're going to continue with the fantasy football offseason content. In fact, there's no offseason on this channel, so if you love fantasy football, if you're passionate about fantasy football, and if you want to talk and just enjoy fantasy sports, this is the channel. So hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell. That bell is very important, but hitting that thumbs up really helps the channel, guys. I'm out here grinding for you guys, doing the research. So hit that thumbs up, takes a second of your time, and drop a name below. Who are you avoiding at the wide receiver position this year? Love to get your feedback. I'm excited to dive in, and I'm telling you, man, I'm super pumped. It's March, and after March, man, we got the draft coming up. And then it's full flow fantasy football 2025. And I got some amazing surprises this year on this channel. So that's why you got to stay glued to this channel, okay? And grab the 16-round draft so you can pre-order right now. All the sleepers, all the breakouts, all the ultimate players draft each round, late round steals, everything you need, full mock drafts, everything in 16 rounds. Grab it below. You can pre-order. Get in the course now. And the first release comes out 2 weeks after the NFL draft. Fully laid out on a silver platter so you can smash your leagues. There's no competition, guys. It's absolute domination with 16 rounds, okay? Let's dive into it. The first wide receiver that I'm avoiding, and I told you to avoid him last year. I'm going to continue on and double down this year. And everybody was telling you to draft. This guy I'm talking about is Deebo Samuel, by the way. We're sitting as wide receiver 37, finished as wide receiver 44. It's so funny how the mainstream analysts, the consensus, the sheeps, everyone that puts out rankings is all off Deebo Samuel now. He is on Washington. He's going to slide in as the wide receiver 2, and he has that rushing upside, some goal line work upside, that type of thing. And I love the quarterback, Jaden Daniels. So he's definitely getting an upgrade, I believe, at quarterback. I think he's in a good situation. But Deebo Samuel was a guy that everybody and their mother told you last year, draft this guy in the 3rd round. I was the only one telling you, screaming from the rooftops. In my I'm wearing my old vintage Counselor shirt. You can tell here, it's all cracked up. I had this, when I first started the brands, that's why it's kind of old. And, anyways, you get your shirts on my website as well. But I'm telling you, I've been screaming with the rooftops in this shirt and all my other shirts. I was screaming every episode, don't draft Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk round 3. We don't know who the wide receiver 1 is. I don't believe that he's going to duplicate the numbers the year prior. And yet everybody that didn't listen to this channel ended up drafting Deebo Samuel at his ADP. If you draft on ADP, you're not following 16 rounds, you will lose. So I'm avoiding him yet again. Last year, what do you have? Like 3 touchdowns, 670 yards, 81 targets, 51 receptions, finished as wide receiver 44. I think he gets a boost. Like I said, he gets a boost at quarterback, but he's still not a wide receiver that I believe in. Unless he gets that rushing upside, I just don't believe him. Now, he is better value than last year. For me, how I draft, and we talk about this in my strategy in 60 rounds in my Patreon group and all my stuff, you want to aim high in the depth chart. Last year, Brian Thomas Jr., everybody was aiming to get Christian Kirk early or just getting wide receivers like Deebo earlier on, where you could easily get yourself a Brian Thomas Jr. who was going to be the one on the team, and I saw that. So you want to aim high in the depth chart, and by getting Deebo, regardless of where he comes off, you're getting the wide receiver 2. Always aim high in the depth chart. Always try to get the wide receiver 1 or the guy that's going to be the wide receiver 1, okay? So Deebo Samuel, I'm out on completely, and you should have listened last year. Number 2 here. He was in the news lately, trending. I did a video with him because he kind of got screwed a little bit. He got paid a lot, but he got screwed. And we're talking about T. Higgins here, sitting as wide receiver 13, finished as wide receiver 17 last year. Now, Deebo Samuel is a wide receiver 2, and Higgins is going to be a wide receiver 2 as well. Always going to be a wide receiver 2. He didn't get the guaranteed money, but he's still getting $26 million. He got franchise tagged 2 years in a row, 2nd year, which again, I think is a bit of a screw job because he doesn't get the guaranteed money, but he's still a top 10 paid wide receiver. And I think he's extremely talented. The problem is the volume. Last year, 109 targets, 73 receptions, 911, believe it or not, receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns. Still not bad, but you want to still aim higher on the depth chart. T. Higgins is always going to be the wide receiver 2. He's always going to be 2nd in the pecking order. And whatever his ADP is going to be, in this case, he's wide receiver 13. So I'm going to guess rounds 3 to 4, just off the top of my head. It's still expensive, right? You're still investing. This is going to be your on your team, potentially your wide receiver 1, 2 on your team, and he's going to be a wide receiver 2 on his team. You're still not aiming high on the depth chart by drafting T. Higgins. I remember a year or two ago, the Kashitas were telling you draft T. Higgins round 2. I'm like, don't do it. He's a wide receiver 2. And yet they continue to put out rankings where wide receiver 2s on their team respectively are drafted as potential wide receiver 1s on your fantasy team. You don't want to do this, everybody. And again, nobody preaches this stuff. They just basically say draft based on ADP, draft based on consensus, draft based on the name. I know the name. I trust the name. It's going to give me consistent numbers. No, you want to be maximizing each position, okay? And again, people thought I was crazy last year. Brian Thomas Jr. was like my wide receiver 2. And I'm like, I'm comfortable with that because he's the wide receiver 1 on his team. And I saw that he was going to be that. So I was comfortable with that, okay? So another guy I'm avoiding is T. Higgins. Still relatively expensive to sit at wide receiver 13 when there's so many other guys, especially some rookies coming in or other guys sliding in, that are going to be the ones on their team that you can get for better value. I'm passing on Higgins, who's going to be the wide receiver 2 for the rest of his life and as long as he's on Cincinnati, okay? And number 3 here, on top of like focusing on and avoiding wide receivers that are wide receiver 2s on their team, right? You also have to be aware of wide receivers that are on a downhill cliff dive. And the guy I'm talking about here, and again, if you're new to the channel, subscribe, thumbs up. Let me know what you guys think of this feedback here. Does this make sense? Because I want to give you guys practical stuff. Like my advice isn't like, hey, this guy finished on top last year. Like last year, everyone drafted CMC first of all. I was like, don't draft CMC. Decline imminent. He just got married. Super Bowl hangover. He showed injuries in 2020, 2021, playing a combined 10 games in 2 seasons. It's likely going to happen again coming off 2 pinnacle years. He was going to decline. Don't draft CMC. Don't draft CMC. Don't draft CMC. Right? I think logically, I look at where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is. So again, the guy I'm talking about here is Davante Adams. Finished 11th last year amongst wide receivers, sitting as wide receiver 19. So the Kaships, are a little bit down on him. But 141 targets, 85 receptions, 1,063 yards, 8 touchdowns, not bad. But he's a free agent at the time of this recording. We're talking early March. Where is he going to land? Who's going to be throwing the ball? What type of wide receiver committee is going to be in, right? It was really annoying when he came in last year because everybody thought Garrett Wilson, even including myself, would have been the one. There was rumblings prior to the season that, Rodgers is going to bring in, Adams. I didn't think it would actually happen, and it did. And he really took a chunk out of Garrett Wilson last year. So he's kind of in that buzzkill, not going to have supreme, Jamar Chase type numbers, doesn't have that ceiling, down cliff end of his, career type seasons, but he's still going to be safe, I would say. And I don't want to pay the wide receiver 19 price for a guy who's over 30 years old, uncertainty what team he's going to land on. Is he going to have a rapport with that quarterback? What type of wide receiver, committee is he going to enter? That's not something I want to invest in, regardless of where he ends up or what the situation is or who's throwing the ball. So I'm out on Adams just simply based on age and natural regression in his twilight sunset years of his career, okay? So Adams, Higgins, and Deebo Samuel will not be drafting him. You want to look for youth. You want to look for upside. You want to look at guys that are on top of their depth chart, that are trending upwards, not guys that are downhill, new teams, new situations, going in as wide receiver 2s, okay? Very, very important data here as we're talking, critical points I'm making so that you guys win your leagues, okay? So if you love fantasy, if you love, football in general, NFL news, this is the channel. Subscribe, thumbs up, hit the thumbs up, drop a comment below, and pre-order 16 rounds. I'll keep the content rolling. We're going to roll out 3 running backs to avoid in tomorrow's episode. I'll keep it going for you. Appreciate you being here. We'll talk soon. Have yourself an outstanding day. Fantasy football is back. Let's keep it rolling.